I am, and we're back.
Oh, hello. We're back. Honestly, it fits the tone of this book, quite
I know.
frankly.
I was giving the microphone a handy.
Fitting. Very fitting.
Quite.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Rory.
I'm Roni.
And today we're doing what, Ronnie?
Have and have not.
Yes, have not. The show where one of us has read a book and the other has not until...
Now.
Woo, now. Yeah. So, welcome. Today we are doing Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. Is that what it's called? The second book?
Sure.
Whatever. It's the second book in the From Blood and Ash series. Yeah. Anything you'd like to say, Ronnie?
Nope. That's
Okay.
the episode, guys. Don't read it.
Yeah. Oh my god. Okay. So, before we even get into the plot, I have to say I'm so fucking disappointed.
Yes. I
Like-
told you would be.
I'm actually kind of devastated because the first book was actually like so good. And I'm
Literally so much potential.
yeah, I really liked the first book. Was it stupid? Of course, but I enjoyed it so thoroughly. It was really entertaining. The romance had me invested, and I was really looking forward to the second book because the first book leaves off on a cliffhanger. Where, if you guys remember, if you listened to the first episode, like the last thing we get is that Hawk, who's the Hawk, who's the love interest to Poppy, our protagonist, he turns out to be a Atlantean, so he's essentially a vampire, and he's basically been double agenting this whole time. And the last thing we see is him saying that they're going to go to Atlantia and get married.
Ooh.
And I was like, ooh.
Against her will.
Well, you'll see. It's
Yeah.
not really, but yeah.
Under false pretenses.
Yeah, so yeah, he basically lied to her for this whole time, had sex with her under false pretenses, and now he's insisting that they're gonna get married. So I was very excited for the second book, and this book is so fucking boring.
Yep.
I can't even remember off the top of my head
So this might actually be a quick
anything.
episode.
No, it might actually, because I literally just don't remember anything, and I don't really have that much to comment on because it was fucking boring. So, and also, before we get started, my biggest critique of the book, or my biggest takeaway, was that this was very, very similar, I guess, in concept to ACOTAR. Like, this felt like the second ACOTAR book, and I said to Ronnie, I probably would be more charitable to this book if I didn't fucking read it already. You know what I mean? Because, like, her being with Hawk, whose real name is Castile, and he's the Dark One, and all this stuff, is very reminiscent of, like, Feyre in the Night Court. And he even has his two, like, Wolven lackeys who are very, like, Bat Boys coded in Kieran and Delano.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, as close as brothers, and like she's learning that the quote bad guys are really not as bad as they seem, and that Atlantia is actually a really nice place, which is very similar to the Night Court that everybody's saying Atlantia is evil and horrible, and then when she goes, it's like amazing. So it was basically the second ACOTAR book, but
It's
way
bullshit.
more boring. Like, at least the second ACOTAR book had like the Weaver's Cottage and like the Blood Rubies
And
and
a
shit.
romance that actually was compelling.
Yeah, and look, we talked a lot of shit about the second ACOTAR book, but I, despite myself, enjoy ACOTAR, even though I also kind of hate it. But this was just straight up boring. Now, luckily for you guys, if you love this series, I'm kind of already a little bit into the third book, and it did get more interesting again. It gets
Because
batshit
it had
insane.
to.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it literally had to get better to win back the appeal. This felt like it could have been a few chapters in the third book.
Yeah.
And not an entire second book. Because all that happens is they fuck.
Yeah, they just fuck, and she comes around to...
She does come around.
Around what, right? The velvet wrapped steel. Luckily that phrase is not brought up. Fucking Sarah J. Maas. But anyway.
But honeydew is.
Honey, oh, gross. Yeah, we forgot to mention that in our first episode.
No, we didn't.
We mentioned it, but then we never circled back around to
Which
it.
is why. What are we drinking today, Rory?
Something with honeydew in it.
Yeah. Straight vodka, honeydew liqueur. It's called the Kill Me Now.
The Kill Me Now. The tastes like honeydew, even though honeydew's not really sweet drink.
Shaken, not stirred.
Exactly. Best bit in the show.
If you are over the age of 21 in the United States of America or the appropriate ages and associated regions of the world, you can join us. But if you are not of age, like Roy's twin brother, please do not join us in our endeavors to drink, because it is illegal and you will be smited by God Almighty. And that relates to this book because there's so many talk of fucking gods. I feel I might get smited if I say anything bad about this book. But anyway, if you join us, there's no way that we would know because it's a one-way to auditorium medium, baby.
All right.
Best bit in the show.
Best bit in the show. Okay, so let's get started into this fucking boring ass book.
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1.
Bullshit. Chapter 2.
Bullshit.
Chapter 3.
Bullshit. So really,
Chapter 4. Fucking bullshit.
Well, in fairness, this whole book is really, the purpose of this book is dedicated to two things. And and I get why she was doing it, but it was poorly executed because it was boring. But the main thing is that Poppy has to come around or reconcile the betrayal. Oh my God, stop. Poppy has to reconcile with herself how she feels about Hawk or Castile. I'm going to call him Castile from now on because he doesn't go by Hawk anymore. But how she feels about Castile after this massive betrayal. And of course, she has to make time for Poppy to come to terms with that betrayal and ultimately be okay with it because it is a romance. And basically update you on like the rest of the lore of the
So this entire
world.
book is just an info dump.
It really is. It's just one big info dump, and it's like wasting pages because ultimately I could almost feel Armentrout like saying to herself, "Ugh, you know, I know she's going to get over it. You know she's going to get over it. But people are going to complain that it went too fast and that she got over this massive betrayal too quick. So I got to drag out Poppy being mad so I can realistically
But
portray
it's
a
the most
relationship."
contrived anger that I've ever read.
Yeah, I mean, in one, like, being fair, Poppy still being mad at him, I get, because I said this last time, there was no reason for him to have sex with her.
No.
Like, this betrayal would have, in my opinion, had the same emotional impact had that not happened, and it would have felt less icky. Because they had already built in the first book a very important emotional attachment, and having him be using her that whole time to ultimately kidnap her, because what he wants is to get his brother back, and she's like, this whole big plan was to get her, so because she's the maiden, hold her for ransom so Castile can get his brother back who's being imprisoned by the Ascended. And it still would have felt like a betrayal, like that they'd built this relationship.
Oh, yeah.
So them having sex in the first book, like, makes this way dicier and makes her anger, in my opinion, a little bit more justified, because that's very, like, that's bad that you had sex with somebody under false pretenses, that she thought she was having sex with Hawk, her guard, who cared about her. And even though
Really, she was having sex with her captor and kidnapper.
yeah, essentially, not he her eventual kidnapper. And like, in fairness to Castile, like,
He had kidnapped her, though, at that time.
No, he hadn't kidnapped her when they had sex. They were in that town, and it was like right before the the guard who gets killed is like, I think there's something fucky with this Hawk guy.
No, but he was already bringing her to Atlantia.
Yes, but she didn't know that.
Exactly. So he had effectively captured her when he fucked her.
That's true. All right, yeah, so it makes it weirder. So I get why she's mad, but it's almost like exhausting, because from a narrative standpoint, I understand that it's necessary for her to be upset, but we all know that she's going to get over it because it's a romance. So it feels tedious to like sift through all these pages.
That's what I mean. Like, I understand why she's angry, but at the same time, we all know what we signed up for. So this whole like blue balling the emotion, it makes it feel fake. Because we know why we're here, Jennifer. We're here for tits and ass.
Right. It's like, oh my God, I gotta sit through this, like, you know, it's like in a rom-com where like they have their misunderstanding and like they do like a sad montage and you're just like, oh, like, okay, like, we get it. Like, it just, that's what it felt like. And I'm going to kill myself for saying this, but at least in A Court of Mist and Fury, it made sense. Like, having Feyre not be immediately into Rhysand during their time together made more sense.
Oh, yeah.
And that buildup was more natural. And I fucking hate complimenting Sarah J. Maas, but that's fact. Because that book and this book are set up very similar, and that book, I think, did this concept better.
Yes, unequivocally.
So that's that. But anyway, they're at dinner, and Castile's still insistent that Poppy's gonna marry him, and she's like, bitch, what are you talking about? Like, no. And he's like, you'll come around. And all of
dick.
You'll come around my dick. And all these people who are around him are like his Wolven, like Kieran and Delano, and then there's other side characters who really serve no purpose. But notably, there's one named Landell who basically calls Poppy a whore.
Wow, even though she slept with one person.
Yeah, like she slept with effectively one person who is your prince, and you still deign to like insult her to her face when this man is very obviously territorial over her and
saying he's gonna marry her and make her princess.
Yeah, and he says some really shitty things to her face that like basically he'll never bow to her and she'll never be queen. And so literally Castile like rips his fucking heart from his chest.
I remember that. Oh yeah.
I was like, wow, was that a fucking intense reaction?
Wow.
But okay. I mean, what I find so funny about these kind of books is the fact that we're meant to be like, yeah, Castile. And I'm like, you just ripped the heart out of one of your subjects who was expressing discontent with a political decision you're making.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's very effective leadership.
Off with your head. French Revolution.
Off with his head, exactly. Like, what the fuck? We're meant to be like, yeah, Castile. And I'm like, is this how he treats his subjects when they disagree with him?
What's the guy's name? It wasn't Toussaint Louverture. That was the guy in Haiti. But who was the guy who was chopping off everyone's
Robespierre.
head? Robespierre.
Yes, Robespierre.
He's fucking Robespierre.
Robespierre over here.
Own people.
Yeah, basically. So I just thought that was funny and weird. Okay, fine. So anyway, Poppy gets up and she goes to her room, but Alistair and Emil walk in. So Alistair, remember, is like that old guy who is also a Wolven, and he's kind of like the Obi-Wan to Castile. Like, he's like this old man, and Castile used to be engaged to Alistair's daughter, who died, which we find out more about. But Alistair, Poppy really likes him because, remember, she had Victor in the first book, who was like her old mentor, and he reminds her of Victor. So she's very inclined, first of all, to trust Alistair, and she wants him to like her because of that. So she doesn't say anything in front of him because Castile, who everybody calls Cass, warns her not to fight him in front of Alistair, because Alistair, you're basically meant to assume that like there's a lot going on underneath the surface that Poppy doesn't know about, like politically speaking, like that Alistair has a lot of political concerns that he's expressing to Castile, and Castile's very clearly ignoring, and a lot of it we know has to do with him marrying Poppy, who's an Ascended, or not an Ascended, but she was with the Ascended. So
she's
this is like
the maiden.
Yeah.
She's the figurehead of their religion.
Yeah. So obviously a lot of people in Atlantia probably wouldn't be cool with this.
The other thing that this book does provide, and I know you're going to talk about it, it makes sure that it gives Poppy an identity outside of being the maiden.
Yes, that's definitely true. Look,
but I wish that could have happened. I wish there was more of an emphasis on her identity rather than the thing with Castile.
I think that's fair. I think the book does an okay job, but what gets me, and this is a problem like overall in the romantasy genre especially, and I felt it in this book, I felt it in some SJM books. Weirdly, SJM does this a little bit better, which again, that kills me to say, but they keep doing this thing where like the main female character is very brave, but she's brave in like a stupid way, and she'll do something really, really brave but really, really dumb and actually counterproductive to the plan, and that forces her to get saved by the like 100-year-old capable male love interest. So it's like wanting to have your cake and eat it too, where it's like, look, she's a strong, independent woman, but now she's being saved by her like hot boyfriend. And it's lame because, first of all, you're not making me think she's strong. You're making me think she's a fucking idiot. And ultimately, you're reneging on what you're trying to accomplish. Like, I don't believe in this have your cake and eat it too. Either she saves herself or she doesn't. Stop trying to do both. It doesn't work for me.
No.
You know? And it's okay if you have some scenes of him saving her. That's fine. As long as there are also some scenes of her saving him, her saving herself, her doing something interesting that has nothing to do with him. But
no.
That's so hard for these female writers to do. And I get it's a romance, but there is allowed to be some character development outside of the romance.
I like how we're talking about this book so seriously when we read Sinful Quinful books in order to like...
Well, those know what they are. They're trash.
They know what they are. This one tries to posit that they're like strong, independent women who make all the wrong decisions and need to be saved by a hulky man.
Right. Well, because let's not pretend. Let's be fucking for real for 2 seconds. There is a big difference between a bodice ripper and trying to write a romantic fantasy. Like, I get this as a romance, but the fantasy genre lends itself to, at least for me, I expect more from that than I do a bodice ripper. A bodice ripper's literally only purpose is to, like, entertain you for 5 minutes with smutty, like, silly romance stories.
Hand touching over gloves.
Literally, though. Like, the only point in any of those stories, every scene, every character, everything always has to do with the romance because that's what you signed up for. This, you're trying to build a world and have a plot and, like... And when you do that, I'm going to expect something from you. I might not judge you as harshly as I would, like, you know, Game of Thrones, which is actually analyzable as a full-fledged high fantasy. But you're clearly presenting me with material that you think is more than just a bodice ripper, right? So I'm going to look at it like that.
Yeah, you got to.
You know what I'm saying? So that's why I bring it up. But anyway, Kieran, the Wolven, takes Poppy back to her room. Oh my god, the fucking fan wiki refreshed. Hold on, give me 1 second.
He takes her back to the room and he's like, oh, you smell like death, bitch. And she's like, I smell like death?
And he goes, no, you smell of death. You don't smell like death. And she's like, I don't know what that means.
She's like, what the fuck? Then she gets really nervous and she picks a lock and she skedaddles into the woods. Rory, this is the part where she does something really damn stupid.
So Poppy just decides that she's going to turn herself into an Ascended. Or not turn herself into an Ascended, sorry. Turn herself over to the Ascended.
Yeah.
So she can find her brother. Which, this
Ian,
is
right?
Yeah, Ian. Which, this is another big problem with this, is that we never met Ian.
No.
And he's like a huge motivator for Poppy in this series. And that bugs me because it could have been so easily fixed. Like... If she had done, like, we said this in the first book, right? Like, remember with Ryland? She did a really great job, like, making me care about Ryland in, like, one fucking chapter before they kill him off. So why couldn't you do the same thing with Ian? Like, why couldn't there have been a scene of Ian being like, oh, Poppy, I'll miss you after I'm ascended. Don't forget to write me.
Even a flashback.
Yeah, like, even a flashback, anything. Just give me one thing where I meet Ian so I understand what her attachment is to him outside of just being her brother. Like, I don't know him.
As like a creepy uncle.
Like, I don't know him. So I get he's her brother and that would be motivating, but, like, as an audience member, I need to, like...
have some emotional connection to this person I'm being told I need to care about.
Yeah, I need to see that. It would have taken her 5 minutes. So anyway, she wants to go find Ian, and he lives in Carcedonia, which is controlled by the Ascended, and Kieran and Cass...
Mind you, her brother lives in Carcedonia, which is one of the cities that they have. Another name of the cities is... Macedonia.
It gets even funnier. There's even more. There's literally a city in this she mentions called Pompeii, which made me piss my pants. Like, fucking Pompeii. Are you joking? Like, like, this is getting ridiculous. But, so, of course, after she runs away and picks the lock, which explicitly the two of them are like, don't run away. There's fucking Craven in the woods, you moron. Like, there's nowhere for you to go. She does something stupid and runs away into the Craven-infested woods. And unsurprisingly, Cass and Kieran catch up to her almost immediately. And Cass sends Kieran back to the castle and makes Poppy this deal that if she can beat him in a fight, then she can leave. Which he knows she's gonna lose. And of course, before anything gets too far, the Craven unsurprisingly attack because, as we've established, the woods are fucking Craven infested. So they show up, and once all the Craven are defeated, they go back to the castle. They burn like the Craven bodies, and Poppy gets drawn up a bath, which is all really boring. It's all just like expository. And when Cass returns, Cass and Poppy discuss their plans for marriage. And Poppy's like, I don't want to marry you. You lied to me. You are kidnapping me. What do you
And he's
what
like,
do you
please, I need to talk to the Blood Crown through you.
And so, spoiler alert, because this is going to come up later. I mean, this whole thing is a spoiler, but it's good to bring up now. Cass's insistence that they get married is so confusing to me because I thought she was going to pull like a Rhysand where like he knew they were, cause, spoiler alert, they're heartmates, which is a whole like concept in this book that's similar to the Sarah J Maas mating, but not quite the same. And at least to my knowledge after the second book. And I thought she was going to pull like a Rhysand where Cass like knew that they were heartmates basically from this point on. And that's why he's so insistent on the marriage. No.
He's genuinely in it for the political intrigue.
He's literally just like, well, it's politically beneficial for me to marry you. And obviously
also, I really want to fuck you again.
Yeah, basically. Like, I'm really attracted to you and I'm not admitting to myself that I'm low-key in love with you. And I have a lot of contrived political reasons for wanting to do this. So, yeah. And I'm like, that's...
Poppy, I popped your cherry.
Like... It's so dumb that he switches gears that fast when his original plan actually made more sense to make her a hostage. Like, that makes more sense, actually, than this weird contrived marriage plan. I get why he's doing it, because he has clearly feelings for her, but it felt weird that he was so insistent. Like, I was fucking convinced that he knew they were mates, and that's what that was about. And no, that's not what it's about at all. So anyway... And so he's like, yeah, so we'll get married so that we can negotiate with the Blood Crown and prevent this war. Like, he gives all these really dumb reasons that didn't really make sense to me why they were going to get married. But apparently it works enough for Poppy to think that he has a point, although she doesn't agree yet to the marriage. She does consider what he's saying. Yeah. Oh, and he also says importantly that after they get married and all this stuff to prevent the war or whatever is settled, because remember that the Atlanteans and the Ascended are always in conflict, always have been, that they're building up to this
because
big
of
war.
their relationship to each other.
Yeah. And he basically is like, after all this is taken care of, you can divorce me if you want, and I'll help you find your brother. And she's like, that actually kind of makes sense.
How many times do we get to fuck you?
Is that like part of the deal? Do we get to still like perform our marital duties and whatever? Not that I care.
Duties.
Not that I care.
Speaking of duties, I got a bidet.
Oh my God. Let's not talk about that right now. Why are you always talking about your shit, man? Oh my God.
It's natural, Rory.
It's natural. Absolutely.
But yeah, duties.
Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
So Poppy wakes up screaming from a nightmare.
Oh, whatever.
About the night her parents were slaughtered, which is a reoccurring thing. It's very like Batman's parents, like just something that happens to her, like Martha, like the pearls dropping. Like that's just what I thought of. And Cass holds Poppy and strokes her hair and like comforts her.
Oh,
and
fuck him.
She feels embarrassed about all of it, but she kind of is comforted by Cass, even though she doesn't like him at this point, quote unquote. Like, bitch, we don't believe you. And the nightmare took a different turn because after he was captured by the blood... Oh, so Cass talks about... Sorry, I'm reading the fan wiki, and the fan wikis are always weird. But basically, Cass tells her about how he was captured by the Blood Crown, which is the Ascended, for a while, and he was all the horrible things he was subjected to, which is very vague. Like, he never really fully explains what that means.
Because it comes back later.
Yeah, I'm sure it does, but she apparently understands what he's referring to. We don't. And he basically is like, no, it's fine. Don't be embarrassed. Like, there's so many times when I wake up screaming in the middle of the night.
In the middle of the night.
I just think that's so funny. Like,
I wake up
it's
screaming
fine. Totally
about
normal.
the time I was imprisoned.
So Cass indicates that Poppy had been talking in her sleep and reciting this disturbing nursery rhyme about a poppy flower, which is like a pretty poppy, like pick it and not so pretty anymore. Like, I forget what the rhyme is, but it doesn't really make any sense. It's like this reoccurring thing. And
Find a poppy, pick it up, then all day you'll have good luck.
yeah, it's kind of like that, but creepier. But it's something her dad used to say, which is a very weird thing for a dad to say, but okay. The next morning, Delano's the other. Delano's Asriel, essentially. Kieran is fucking Cassian, and then Castiel is Rhysand. And so Delano is guarding the bedchamber door while Cass is gone to make sure Poppy doesn't try to escape again. And Delano suddenly comes barging into the room because he hears Poppy screaming. Oh, yeah, I forgot. They don't explain this, but while they're having this conversation, things get a little spicy. They get a little heated.
I found the poem.
Oh, you found the poem? Go ahead, read it.
What a pretty little flower. What a pretty poppy. Pick it up and watch it bleed. Not so pretty any longer. Poppy.
Like, cool.
Weird. That's what her dad used to tell her.
Yeah, that's great. That's totally sounds like something a reasonable father
Almost
would
like
say.
It's not even like her dad.
Yeah. Yeah. Weird that, you know? But so it's so funny because they're having this conversation about their mutual trauma and how they both wake up screaming in the middle of the night, and somehow this turns into like sexy foreplay.
Ew.
And he basically, I forget what he does to her, but he does some like thing to her that's sexual. And
Does he bite her?
I don't remember.
Does he lick her?
I don't remember.
Does he stroke her?
I literally don't remember.
Does he kiss her?
I don't know. Probably. But whatever.
Does he titillate her titillates?
Yes, I think he does. So he does some schmexy thing, and she ends up yelling. Like, she ends up basically screaming from the pleasure. And Delano is outside the door, and he comes barging in and thinking, like, somebody's attacking them. And then he realizes what was going on, which there's so many instances where poor Delano and Kieran are, like, witness to Castiel and Poppy's sexual escapades. And I'm like, you people are way too close with each other. I get you're supposed to be, like, best friends, but I that's weird.
He's like, oh, maybe it was
It's
just
so
the
weird.
wind. I don't even know.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna go.
I gotta go.
I gotta go. And so Cass announces their engagement, and he asks to speak with Poppy alone again, and this is later. He's with a bunch of people, and Alistair confesses that he doesn't buy this change of heart. Like, they have to convince everyone that they're in love, and that's why they want to get married, because everybody thinks that Castiel's brother's a goner. Like, everyone just was resigned to the fact that Castiel's brother, who's the real heir to the throne, like, is gone. They're never getting him back. And Castiel, for, like, decades, has been, like, on his own trying to find a way to get his brother back. And
Say her brother's name.
I don't remember his name.
Malik.
So Malik, his brother, everybody thinks is gone. And so he doesn't want to, like, let everybody know right away that the whole reason for this marriage is another way to try and get his brother back. So he has to convince everyone that he wants to marry Poppy for love. Like, that's really the reason. It has nothing to do with political shit. And Alistair is like, yeah, I'm not buying it. I know him too well. I think he's doing this shit.
He was already engaged to Shay. And...
Yeah, Shay's Alistair's daughter. He's like, I'm not buying this shit. I know that he's doing this for me. And Poppy's like, what? No. How could you even say such a thing? And he's like, girl, like, level with me, please. And she still doesn't admit that he's totally right about this situation. And Alistair notably also tells Poppy that he's willing to help her escape. Like, he's like, if you're here against your will, I will give you back to the Ascended. Like, don't do this if he is keeping you here against your will. And Poppy's like, whoa. And this is her out. But she doesn't tell Alistair that she's...
It's almost like she's more sexually attracted to Castiel than she wants to get away from him.
Yeah, so for some reason...
Stockholm Syndrome.
This is the first sign that she's actually going to go through with this marriage to Castiel, because Alistair gives her an out and she says no. And Alistair also mentions to Poppy that Cass was previously engaged to his daughter, Shay, and he asks Poppy not to say anything about Shay to Cass because he doesn't like talking about her. So Poppy finds this old Atlantean census in a library where they are. I don't remember where. I don't really care. But Cass points to an empath warrior, because remember, Poppy's an empath. Like, that's her powers. And he tells Poppy that he thinks that she's a descendant of this empath warrior, which why? Like, why can't she just be an empath without it being, like...
It needs to be, it's like, not matra, but it's patrilineal, maybe.
I know, but I mean, like, what, is there only one empath warrior that's ever existed? Like, there's only one person who's ever been an empath ever? That's, like...
That's the implication.
You know, I don't know. That just felt weird to me. But anyway, the line was thought to have died long ago. And so this is, again, trying to reinforce, which is already mentioned last book, that Poppy's parents are probably not actually her parents. So Kieran brushes...
Wait, can we pause? I'm hungry.
Okay.
We'll be back. And I'm back with peanut butter crackers.
Oh, hello. I didn't know you turned it on. Okay, so we're also back with, first of all, the most interesting chapters in the book. So the next couple chapters are like the only really actually good chapters in the book, because this book started out pretty strong, I gotta say. Like... And then it got boring. So this is actually what's interesting. So anyway, Alistair, Emil, and the rest of Alistair's people leave to check the roads because they're still at New Haven, which is the town we left off in, that the Atlanteans took over so they could kidnap Poppy. And apparently, while they're gone checking the roads, like all these people are gone checking the roads, Lord Cheney, along with the Royal Guards and the Royal Knights, appear at New Haven. So Lord Cheney's one of the Ascended. And he and his guards basically are like, we know you're in there and we want the maiden back. And he also pulls out Mrs. Toulis, who, remember, was one of the people in that couple from, like, the last book. Anyway. And he announces that Mrs. Toulis told him that Poppy was at New Haven. So when they tell them, and there's a character named Elijah also who's one of the Atlanteans, and he's like, nope, there's no maiden here. Lord Cheney kills Mrs. Toulis in front of everybody, basically to say... Yeah, I know you're full of shit. So Cass comes out of the woods where he was watching the events unfold with Poppy, and he basically tells them, hey, fuckers, what are you doing here? And they're like, who are you? Ooh, that sounded good. That was Ronnie's seltzer.
It was a good one.
He said, hey, fuckers, and they're like, who the hell are you? And he's like, I'm who they call the dark one.
I'm the dark one, bitch.
He's like, I am the dark one, because remember, he's British.
He's not British, he's Atlantean.
He's British. And they say, oh, shit. And so, understandably, everybody gets into a big fight. And Poppy notices that a royal knight is dragging this young boy to the stables. And Poppy follows them and she kills the knight. But then another one shows up. And Poppy prepares to fight this knight. But then Lord Cheney comes out of nowhere. And he has the boy with him. It's this, like, random boy. And he's, like, basically pulling a, like, I'll kill him if you don't surrender. And Poppy puts her knife down.
She puts on her acting skills.
Yeah, she puts on her acting skills, and she's like, oh my god, Lord Cheney, I'm so happy you're here. I was just kidnapped by these awful fucking Atlanteans, and I want you to take me back where I belong with the Ascended.
I just need you to take me. Whack!
Yeah, and then they whack her over the head and knock her out. And so she wakes up in a carriage, because he's not buying it. He doesn't fully believe that she wants to come back with the Ascended. And Poppy wakes up in the carriage with Lord Cheney and the Royal Guard surrounding the carriage, which I kind of love that he doesn't buy it, because why would he? Like, I feel like in a different situation, you could safely assume that she would want to come back to the Ascended because that's all she'd ever known. But even he's like, girl, you've been spending weeks with, like, this hunky man and his hunky crew.
I can see the outline of his dick in those trousers. I know where you're coming from.
Yeah, he's like, girl, there's no way you weren't seduced, and that's exactly what happened. So funny. So she wakes up in a carriage with Lord Cheney, and there's, like, all these guards surrounding the carriage, and basically they're telling her they're taking her back to the Ascended and back to the queen, Eliana, who's the queen of the Ascended. And Lord Cheney smells Poppy's blood and stupidly attacks her. This made no sense to me.
Why not?
Like, what was the point of that? Like, you're supposed to be guarding her. You're supposed to be taking her back alive to the...
You can still leave them alive.
I know, but why are you doing this to her? What?
Because she's irresistible to the ascended.
She's like Bella Swan blood. Like, it's just too fucking delicious
It's just
smelling.
virginal blood. Yeah.
Oh my goodness gracious. So she stabs him a bunch of times while he's...
It's like, she told me to stab, and so,
so
I did.
Yeah, like a Nifty just stabbing him over and over again.
Stab, stab.
And then, of course, all of a sudden, while she's trying to stab him to get him off her, Cass shows up and he like rips open the carriage door and like throws Lord Cheney out.
I bust the door out of your carriage.
And Poppy starts panicking and she keeps like stabbing the air and because she doesn't realize like that she's being rescued. And then she blacks out again and wakes up to find that Cass gave her his blood to heal her, because we already established that Atlantean blood heals. It's very Vampire Diaries, of course. And so Poppy immediately goes to help the wounded because she's such a good person.
She's such a good
After
queen to
almost
be.
dying, she's got to go think of other people so we know that she's a good person. And an old woman tells Poppy that she's like a second
gosh.
daughter, and I was like, okay. And apparently it's, quote, not in the way that Poppy thinks, but chosen nonetheless. Like, I didn't really care. Alistair watches and mentions to Poppy that people are scared of her because the empath warriors are known as soul eaters in Atlantia, whatever that means. So basically he explains that soul eaters are these people who can suck emotions out of people and then turn emotions back on people and kill them, which doesn't really make sense to me, but I just went with it because I don't care enough. And on the way to the dungeon, Cass pulls Poppy into the pantry. Okay, so they have some sexy time after this whole incident happens. I think it's to show you that Cass was like, I almost lost you. And Poppy's like, I almost never saw you again. And they have a moment in the pantry where they nearly have sex in a pantry.
In here, in the dark, I'm just Hawk and you're just Poppy.
Yeah, they basically dry hump in a pantry, and she's like, and she realizes she's actually disappointed he doesn't fuck her brains out in a pantry with everybody standing outside. So Cass takes Poppy down to the dungeon so she can kill Lord Cheney herself. And his tongue was already ripped out by Kieran.
Which
Our
is so
heroes,
stupid.
everybody.
Which is so stupid.
Yeah, you wouldn't question him? Why would you rip his tongue out?
So I can't,
Oh my god, that doesn't make any sense. It's yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Be able to. I used my tongue. It's just so stupid. Information. Come on, folks.
Yeah, I know. Nobody really thinks about that in these books. But our heroes, everyone.
Ripping tongues out and hearts out. Yep. Watch your organs, folks. They're not safe.
So Cass goes to speak with the families who lost someone during the Ascended attack, and Poppy sits in the library with Kieran. And then she goes down to these tunnels to add Mr. and Mrs. Toulis's names to this wall of names who died at the hands of the Ascended.
I actually liked that scene.
Yeah, that was actually really sweet, and it was moving because there's this wall in New Haven that's got all these names on it. And Poppy has a nightmare regarding the night her family died. Oh, and the significance of that wall, too, is that something that Castile shows her basically it's one of the things that he shows her to prove to her that the Ascended are evil.
Yeah.
And starts to, change her perspective. And Poppy has another nightmare.
Effectively by signing the names of Mr. and Mrs. Toole on there, she is saying, I believe that the Ascended are bad people, because that is an amalgamation of all the bad acts that the Ascended have done.
Yeah, it's opening her eyes to how much harm they've caused.
So she has metaphorically or symbolically turned a new leaf after signing their name on the cavern, and you'll notice that as we go forward, she's not as forgiving.
Mm-hmm. So she has another nightmare about the night her family died. She keeps having those this whole book, which got really repetitive, but okay. And so he comforts her again. We get this whole scene again, and he's like, let's pretend that I'm just Hawk and you're just Poppy.
Again.
And
dumbass.
We're not Castile and Penelope, and you're not the maiden and I'm not the dark one, and let's just cuddle and be okay with each other. And she's like, okay. So the next morning, Poppy, Kieran, Cass, and Niall and Delano leave to go to Spessa's End, and Elijah thanks Poppy for helping his people. And
all she did was get knocked out.
yeah, I know. I'm like, you didn't really do shit, but okay, thanks, Poppy.
Okay, thanks, but no.
So she basically also confirms with Castile that she is going to marry him. That, like, she basically is saying it in everything but word at this point, where she's like, yeah, I'm okay with this arrangement. And she starts to get nervous that she's not going to act right, which makes sense. And Castile's like, you'll be grand. And they move on.
Well, because she's never been in a relationship before.
Yeah. And he also tells her that if they're going to make this work and convince people that they're in love, that they were, like, more in love seeming when she was, like, threatening him with, you know, like, knives
Death.
and they were playing around. And,
Which is literally such a turn on for him throughout the rest of the series.
yeah, that she, like, when she threatens to hurt him, I'm like, okay. And he's like,
He's like, boing.
boing. Yeah, he's like, just act how you were acting before when you would threaten me. It's really hot and people will believe we're into each other because that turns me on.
No, it doesn't.
And
Not everyone else has a murder kink.
I know, for real. They also have a conversation, too, where she, like, gets bold enough to ask him about Shay and, you know, the woman he was engaged to before. And he's like, I really don't want to talk about her. And he's, like, sulky for the next 3 days because she even brought it up, which is so fucking annoying. Like, man, baby, get over it. And so they're riding, and as they're riding through the woods to get to Atlantia, they see, like, bones in trees, and they're like, oh my god, that's from the Dead Bones clan. And fucking unsurprisingly, the Dead Bones clan shows up and attacks them.
I wonder what the Dead Bones clan's like. Is
Yeah.
it dead bones or live ones?
Yeah, they seem great. Should we, like, hang around and wait for them? Of course they get attacked. And because of this, Cass takes, like, multiple arrows to the back and to the stomach, but he pulls a Cassian. He's fine.
And she gets a minor cut on the arm, and he's like, let me help you, Poppy.
Oh, let me help you with that.
Let me bandage up your wound, Poppy. It sounds like he's saying puppy sometimes.
Yeah.
Hi, Poppy.
Pompeii.
Hi, Poppy.
So they get to this place called Pompeii,
Oh.
and the group continues to this place called Spessa's End, where they plan to wait for the rest of the New Haven people before they actually go to Atlantia. So they're moving these people to Atlantia and whatever. And so we meet these two other characters named Quentin and Beckett, and they are two young Wolvins, and they lead Poppy and Cass to, like, their suite in Pompeii to stay for the night. And Beckett becomes important in the third book, not so much in the second book, but Beckett's around, so remember him. And Poppy, in the middle of the night, Cass wakes up, and there's this very weird scene. He goes into, like, a bloodlust, and he doesn't initially realize who she is while he's in the middle of this bloodlust, and he, like, puts his hands on her throat like a fucking, like, World War II veteran having, like, a fucking flashback in the middle
PTSD.
of the night. Like, yeah, like, he goes, like, full unbroken. Like, wakes up in the middle. It was crazy. I was like, this is very concerning. I laugh, but indignantly, because it's not funny. But he puts his hand on her neck, and she is screaming. And he lowers himself down on her body, and he starts to basically finger her. And she's like, oh, I was scared because your hand was on my throat, but now that you're fingering me, I'm kind of into it. Like, it was
And Kiernan comes busting in, like, let me save you. Ah!
It's so weird. And he, like, snaps back into himself and realizes what's going on.
No, at first, Cass turns and starts to growl at Kieran like a feral fucking idiot.
Oh, yeah, because it's...
And he goes like,
well, you're meant to imply, too, that part of that feral aggression is, like, he's another man coming in. Like, that Poppy's, like, his, you know...
thing.
His
Property.
woman. And it's, like, a very, like...
His
it's very,
heartmate.
like, SJM, like, how, like, the feral animalistic quality of her males. It's like that, where it's like, oh, he sees that as, like, a threat to his woman. Like, this bloodlust.
woman.
The way that she writes the bloodlust, it happens both with Poppy and with Castile, is it's almost like, not only is it like a bloodlust because of vampirism, it immediately becomes sexual. Like, you're so fueled that you, like, you're like a dog in heat, like, you need release, and, like, it's very odd. It happens more than once, which it makes some kind of sense logically, but I wasn't into it. I was like, this is weird. I don't know, but okay.
I was off put by it all.
Yeah, I was like, God,
Okay.
I don't know, guys. I'm not into violence. Like, if you are, great. That's a kink. I'm here for you. I
You've
support
got it
you.
in this book.
I support you, but I don't know. Like, it wasn't it for me. But Some of the scenes were hot. This wasn't one of them. And yeah, so because she gets scared that Cass is gonna like attack Kieran, she tries to like do that woman thing in movies and books and stuff where she's like, Cass, like, it's me. Like, you know, like fucking glass hands like touching his face. And he basically snaps out of it and he's like, oh my god, Poppy, I'm so sorry.
She also uses her empath abilities to push happy thoughts on him too. That's another thing.
And he's like, Poppy, I'm so sorry.
And he leaves with like a dog with his tail between his legs.
Yeah, and she's almost kind of like, it's so funny because the way the scene comes across, she's like, I mean, I was like kind of into it, and if Kieran didn't show up, I would have let you fuck the shit out of me. But yes, I'm gonna pretend like that wasn't the case.
And we find out why he was in bloodlust, because Poppy talks to Kieran.
Yeah.
And we find out that Cass essentially has been going on a hunger strike since meeting Poppy because he doesn't want to feed from anyone else.
Yeah, like that he can only feed from her.
Now.
For what reason, Ronnie? It's because they're fucking heartmates.
Yeah. Which neither of them know right now.
Yeah, neither of them know, but he basically like can't bring himself to feed from anybody else.
Because it's such a sexually charged thing.
Yeah, it's very sexually intimate.
It's very sensual.
Which okay. I mean, look, again, did that concept turn me on? No, but it's not illegitimate as a concept in a vampire romance. Like
I thought it was more endearing that he just didn't want to like maybe cheat on her.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. My point is that my sort of laughing at it isn't because I think it's illegitimate as a concept. Like, I don't want to say that it shouldn't have been there because it's her story. And as far as like a vampire romance goes, vampires are kind of like inherently very sexually charged beings because you're exchanging fluid through like relatively intimate contact. And so I get why she makes it that way. Like
sharing fluids.
Yeah, so, you know, I get why it's there and I get why it appeals to people, but, you know, whatever. So, Kieran tells Poppy, though, in this time that he thinks they're heartmates. And Poppy's like, bro, I don't even know what that is. But thank you. And he basically refuses to explain. This is what I hate in books, when people will explain things but then not. And he's like, I can't tell you. And she's like, why? And he's like, reasons. Like, why can't you just explain? Like, I don't understand. I hate contrived reasons for not expounding upon information. Like, just what reason do you have to not tell her what it means?
It's a dumb reason.
Especially because why wouldn't Castile know what that is? Or why wouldn't he have recognized that by now and shared that with her? Whatever. Anyway.
Before we move on, we're about halfway done.
Oh, great.
So we might as well do a little breaky break and then we'll
good.
Get back into it. You'll see how nothing has happened.
Yeah, nothing's
happened.
Nothing's moved forward. We're still just traveling to Atlantia, which is where we left off. Like,
on the road again.
Can't wait to get on the road again.
All right, we'll be back in a few.
And we're back. Okay, so anyway, everybody has breakfast and Poppy can kind of feel the awkwardness that like Cass's whole entourage just really doesn't like her and doesn't want her there.
Mm-hmm.
And she has this conversation with Alistair. So, by the way, this is fucking hilarious that Kieran won't explain to her what heartmates are, but Alistair, like, talks about this thing called the joining, which he doesn't really fully explain, but it has to do with, like, two people who are heartmates, and a wolven has to get involved somehow, and it's like a blood oath type joining, and it's like the way he explains it to Poppy is like it's an inherently sexual thing, and he gets really embarrassed and flustered, and she's like, bro, what?
Why didn't you tell me about this first?
Like, I just felt very awkward, like, why even bring that up? But okay, thanks, Alistair, you dirty old man. And it's so funny because the way the fan wiki phrases this is that Poppy decides to turn to Kieran and she plans to offer herself as dinner to Cass. Yep. That's so funny. Like, that's such a weird way to phrase it, but it's so accurate that she's going to offer herself as dinner. Like, she's like, you know, Cass is starving, so I'm going to let him drink my blood so he isn't hungry anymore.
But Kieran has to be present.
Yeah, but Kieran's got to be there so he doesn't go overboard like a la Edward in Twilight. He's gonna suck her dry. So Cass eventually joins them. Ooh. And they go to Poppy's room, and
It's basically
he
Poppy and
feeds on
Cass's
her.
room.
Yeah, well, he feeds on Poppy, and things get very sexual. I love the fan wiki says immensely sexual, and Kieran has to like intervene. Like, it's so awkward. This is what I'm talking about. There's so many scenes of like a third party person intruding on Poppy and Castiel's sexual interactions.
I was about to call her SJM. I think JLA has something for like
Threesomes.
I was gonna say exhibitionism,
Maybe exhibitionism, threesomes, something like either one. But
fluid drinking.
yeah, because literally there's so many instances of Poppy and Castiel doing something very sexual where like a third person is in the room, enters the room, like whatever, intervenes somehow, because like he's basically like, she's like straddling like him, and he's like basically drinking from her, and like she can feel him getting excited, and like it's a whole thing, and Kieran has to like basically pry them apart because it's like implied that even though he's drinking her, he would just like fuck her as he was drinking. Like, this is like a vampire Atlantean thing, and I'm like, that like it's part of sex.
My face looks
And
really weird.
it's like you're drinking blood, and that's where the blood is going to his dick. So like that's what's happening. And once Kieran makes sure that the two of them are cool, he's like, okay, I'm gonna go. This was uncomfortable for everyone.
And
you
Cass
guys...
is like, you better go because I'm about to make it even more uncomfortable.
So he's like, thank you, Poppy, for letting me drink from you. And she's like, oh, you're welcome.
And he pleasures her.
And yeah.
Move on, this is so gross.
So he teaches her how to ride horses later. And this guy named Colton, who's in charge of the stables, gets like a weird shock when he looks at Poppy for the first time.
Well, also, we missed it before, but when Kieran touched Poppy one time, he also got a vault.
So there's multiple people throughout the books who like will touch her and will get like a static shock.
Yeah.
We don't know what it's meant to mean yet.
I do.
You know, I don't, but
and it's bullshit.
It's a thing. So Kieran shows up out of nowhere with this Wolven who's a female named Venetta, and that's Kieran's sister, so that's cool. She doesn't really play a big role.
Nope.
They talk about Poppy's prior life as a maiden over sandwiches. Girl talking sandwiches.
Yes.
And then there's like a large commotion outside, and the four of them go and they see Alistair holding a Wolven. And Beckett was in an accident that shattered his legs. So Beckett needs to go back into his mortal form. Very Jacob Black. He has to go back into his mortal form, and they have to like re-break his bones so they can set them again and they can heal. So it's literally Jacob from Twilight, where he breaks like the one half of his body and they have to like reset the bones that way. So she takes away Beckett's pain, because there's always got to be like multiple scenes in these books of Poppy like taking away somebody's pain.
So you don't forget that she has this power that she's known for. Yeah.
Yeah, which like, bitch, I didn't forget.
Don't worry, I didn't forget. It's like her only character trait at this point.
Yeah, it's the only thing
and she
does.
likes cunnilingus.
Also that, yeah, basically 100%. And so the moment that Poppy's hands touch Beckett's fur, her hands begin to glow, and everybody's like, what the fuck? And she then ends up almost doing too much, and she heals Beckett's legs. So not only does she take his pain away, but she full on heals his legs, and her hands glow and whatever. And I'm like, what? This felt very weird.
Do you know why yet?
I don't know why yet. Well, I kind of know why.
Why?
Well, it comes in the third book, so I don't want to say it now.
Oh, yeah.
But this crowd gathers around, and they're all like, the hell?
Girl, you okay?
Yeah, like, what? This is very weird. And for some reason, this makes Cass believe that they should get married here in Spess's End instead of waiting at like Scion's Cove, wherever that is. The world, like where they're going, and the geography is very like flimsy to me. I don't really understand the significance.
Don't worry, the maps don't help at all, because there was none in the first book.
Nice. So later at dinner, Kieran and Cass are talking, and Alistair sits next to Poppy, and he basically is like, I just do not believe that Cass is in love with you. And Poppy's like, ouch. And also Alistair reveals, Alistair, you little gossipy snake. He like undermines her confidence. He's like negging her, but not for himself. He's like, yeah, he's not in love with you, and he's also engaged to my niece in Atlantia.
Gianna.
And he has been for like 5 decades, so. And it's like weird he didn't bring that up sooner, but okay. And Cass and Alistair get into like this shouting match, and we meet Jasper, who's Kieran's father. So fucking every member of Kieran's family we get to meet at some point. And Jasper tells Alistair that he's overstepping, like, with all this, which is totally correct. He absolutely is. But it is stupid and weird that Cass wouldn't have mentioned this to Poppy. Like, two things can be true at the same time. This is definitely Alistair overstepping, but at the same time, he should have mentioned this to Poppy.
Oh, he should have.
Like, oh, by the way, I was engaged, but that was before I met you, and now my plans are changing. So just so you know, if people mention my betrothed, she's not my betrothed anymore, because it was kind of a loose engagement anyway, and Poppy would have been like, oh, sick, cool. But, like, finding it out from Alistair feels... Of course you're going to be like...
upsetting that, like, both of Alistair's, like, kin have been brought to Cass for marriage, and both of them have been, like... Their plans have been thwarted.
Yeah, well, he was going to marry Shay, but we'll get into that later.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, Shay was Alistair's daughter.
Yeah, and it says that Cass marrying Gianna would have strengthened the bonds between the Wolven and the Atlanteans, which felt like a flimsy excuse because the Wolven are already very close to the Atlanteans. I mean, the fact that Kieran and Delano are literally, like, Cass's brothers, like, the Bat Boys, like, in his inner circle, extremely close with him, went on this mission with him. Like, it's very clear that there is no bad blood between Wolvens and the Atlanteans, so I don't get why this marriage was absolutely necessary. Like, yeah, like, what does that even, what do you mean by that? They don't have any cousins, too, to, like, marry off to Wolven? Like, why does he have to marry a Wolven? That doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, Jasper, who's Kieran's dad, reminds Alistair that you don't speak for the Wolven. Like, and yeah, exactly. And Cass makes it clear that he never really agreed to this arranged marriage. It was kind of like an idea that was being floated around, and Alistair is like, me, and he goes and like sulks on the corner. So this other Atlantean insults Poppy, and that worked out so great for the last person who insulted Poppy. And Poppy makes it clear that even though she was raised by the Ascended, she didn't know, like, she says like what she should say. Like, I'm like, yeah, I was kind of on Poppy's side for this. Like, Poppy's annoying, but she definitely had a point where she's like, bitch, like, why are you all acting like I'm an Ascended? I literally was raised by them. I didn't know anything else. Like, I couldn't have helped you. Like, now I know. Hindsight 2020, bitch. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I literally had no idea any of this was going on, and now the second I found out what was really going on, I was pretty on board with not being
down with the crown.
Like, even though she was rejecting Cass's marriage proposal, she came around pretty quickly
to the fact that the
believing him.
I think she knew something was off, but she never had the momentum.
Yeah,
behind
the proof, really.
Yeah.
Like, to confirm her suspicions. And her rejection of Castile at the beginning was personal more than it was, you know, anything else. Like, it was his personal betrayal that she was rejecting him. But she, basically from the time he tells her what the Atlanteans are and the Ascended are actually like, she believes him almost immediately. She's like, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so she basically like calls them out. She's like, dude, what the fuck, like, what are you talking about? I feel like she could have gone even harder, but anyway, and she tells them that she knows about Castile's original plan and that she doesn't really care, and she's already in love with him and he's in love with her, and like really like selling it. It's a very like rom-com moment, you know, where like they're like, oh, prove to us you're together and kiss in front of us, or like, what do you love about this person? And like the person,
sharp objects.
Sharp objects, and the person has to be like, I love blah blah blah, and it's very clear that they're being genuine even though they're pretending. Like, okay, Poppy. So
I love the way that he screams when I fake stab him.
Yeah. Oh, and he also admits that when she found out about his plan that she stabbed him in the heart, and everybody's like, oh, ha, 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 That's so funny.
And-
you tried to murder him. That's hilarious.
And Jasper, who's Kieran's dad, was like, I guess you and your dad both have a kinship for the ladies that like to stabby.
And he's like, oh, wow, what a charming anecdote to tell me about my own father, that he's got a kink for sharp knives. Can't wait to have that mental image in my brain forever. You're like, what the fuck? So Poppy declares to the room, and this was actually a really nice moment, that she's like, Cass was the first thing that she chose for herself. And although she chose him when she thought he was Hawk, she continues to choose him as Castile. And Cass is, like, pretty surprised by this, because this is the first time she's really actually said anything genuinely nice about him or their relationship after finding out that he lied to her that whole time. And she's very clearly being genuine. And Jasper, who's speaking on behalf of the Wolven, I love that he calls out Alistair, like,
for
you don't
speaking on the Wolven, and then he
yeah.
proceeds to speak for the Wolven.
Yeah, you don't speak for all Wolven. I speak for all Wolven.
I am the Lorax, and I speak for the trees.
And
You're not a tree, you're a shrub. Step aside, little man.
For real. And he's like, if Cass has chosen Poppy, how could we not do the same? All Wolven arise.
Ugh.
And so Poppy goes outside to get some fresh air, and she runs into Niall and Delano, and Niall's another Wolven, and they share a drink. Poppy tells Cass that she does not feel like talking to him right now because she's pretty, like, emotionally drained from saying that out loud, because that's the first time actually she's even confronting her feelings. Like, it's a weird revelation for both her and
it happened
him.
in front of people.
Exactly. She's like, I didn't even realize I felt that way, but apparently she does, and she's, like, kind of sad because she's like, you know, he did a really fucked up thing and I'm in love with him anyway, and I'm really mad at myself for that, but also not.
Which is very fair and valid.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked that it was clearly complex, like how she comes to terms with these feelings and whatever. She just burped. I love
I
that.
muted my mic.
So, Jasper wants to speak with Kieran, and Kieran takes Poppy back to her room, and she cries herself to sleep over this. And so when Cass comes into the room, he wakes Poppy up, and he's teasing her, but she's like, I'm not in the mood to be teased. I want to hear about Gianna. Like, why didn't you tell me you were engaged? And he says very weakly that he never told Poppy because Gianna didn't want Cass for herself and he never wanted her. Like, I'm like, okay, but that's, like, flimsy. You still should have mentioned it, you know. But he is he's angry, which was so stupid. He's, like, angry that Poppy could even believe that Cass would do such a thing after what he's done for her, and, like, that he would be engaged to someone else. And I'm like, bitch, you're a liar. You literally, your whole relationship started on a
Built
lie.
on lies. Like, the Jenga set is only on one middle piece and it's teetering.
Like, he's allowed to have a reaction that's hurt. Like, he's allowed to feel however he wants to feel. Like, you're allowed to feel hurt that that's what she thinks, but you can't be surprised or indignant that that's what she
No.
thinks.
Dummy.
Like, you're not in the right in this situation, Castile. And Cass accuses Poppy of never trying to get to know him and of never asking him questions that are really on her mind. And she's like, dude, all you do is, like, lie to me and, like, explode with, and like, ignore, so whatever. She asks him all these questions and, like, basically is just like, okay, you want me to fucking ask you questions? Here's my questions, motherfucker. And she asks him all these questions about Gianna, Spessazen, his former lover, how, all this other stuff. And Cass tells her
That he came to that room to make sure what she said was actually the truth, even though she's never lied to him up until this.
I know, literally. She has not lied to him even one time about anything at all. So, projection on Cass's part. I'm not a psychologist, but that's what I think is happening.
Projection.
So, Poppy says nothing because she's like, oh. And he tells her that he wants everything from her because it's basically like him saying, I can't have only half of you. Like, I don't believe what I said to you originally about our arrangement anymore. I want everything. Like, I want
all the X, Y's, and Z's.
Yeah, like, and they both kind of have a breakdown, and they are like, our relationship is fucked up and weird, and he's like, yeah, it is, and yeah. And Cass explains to Poppy,
oh, I'm in love with you, but it would be so much easier if I wasn't. And it gets all lovey-dovey.
Yeah, and he basically confesses his love without confessing
And
his
then
love.
what happens?
Yeah, they're interrupted.
Guys, it's Emil here. The sky's on fire.
The sky is falling.
Ah!
Code red. Like, yeah, like literally he's like, I hate to interrupt, but the sky is on fire?
How, you might ask? I'm not going to be specific. Come and see.
So they basically go up on the rise and they see that, like, yes, the sky is kind of indeed on fire. Or that, like, rather the entire western sky has fires going on, like, in the distance. And they wait for Dante and Delano to go scout the fire and see what the deal is with the fucking fire. And Jasper talks to Poppy while Cass and Kieran are busy with Alistair trying to figure out this whole situation. And he tells Poppy that he never expected Poppy to marry Gianna and, like, basically reassures her about this whole thing. So this whole, like, plot point with Gianna just takes up pages.
It's literally, we can stop talking about it quite literally because it does not come up again.
Yeah, just know that
it was just a point of useless conflict that was used because the author had no other better way to put the two people together to have them actually confess to each other that they love each other.
Yeah. So
it's literally so bad.
So boring, so boring. But the important part about this conversation is that he basically tells Poppy, yeah, what you did with Beckett back there, healing him, yeah, I've never seen anybody who's part of this fucking empath line do that.
I have.
What?
I have.
You have. Like you,
I've read,
Ronnie, have? Yeah.
No, but I've read the books.
But Jasper's like, yeah, that's not a thing, so I don't know what that's about. And nobody is really looking that hard into it. Everybody just kind of accepts it and moves on. And Jasper's like, yeah, that was weird. Maybe you should think about that. And she goes, thank you, Jasper. I didn't think about that. Like, what? Like, so dumb. So,
hey, maybe you should check out and see what the source of your really weird godlike powers are.
Good.
Thanks.
Noted. Yeah, noted. Thank you.
Will do now.
You know,
I was just gonna let it go.
Yeah, I just wasn't gonna dwell on that at all. But thank you. Now that you've said that,
I think I'm gonna actually take it seriously.
So Delano comes back after
Why don't I
scouting.
practice with trying to break your neck and healing it?
Great idea.
Great idea.
So Delano goes, scouting the area, and he comes back like covered in blood, and
As he should.
so they all run down to meet Delano, and he like immediately passes out because he's got this puncture wound in his lungs. So Poppy heals Delano, so all of a sudden now she can control these powers, which when she
so
healed Beckett,
stupid.
it was totally on accident, and now she's like putting her hands on Delano and like healing him. I'm like, what the fuck? Where did that come from? How can you just do that now? I hate some of these magic systems, dude. I just hate it. So he's like, there are like 800 ascended, and they're coming this way, and they killed Dante. And I'm like, oh no, not Dante. Like,
Did he die in an inferno?
Yeah, the sky is on fire. I mean, he very well could have. Is he singed? I would have loved if Delano had come back like singed, like just like he put his tail out. That would have been great.
Great.
But
They should do that in the movie.
they really should if they ever make a movie, dude. I would want to be in that movie as just like one of the villagers who gets killed by the Craven. That's what I would want. So bad. Spess's End has less than 100 people who are capable of fighting and 20 archers, so they are hopelessly outnumbered.
Yep.
Cass instructs Kieran to go to Scion's Cove for reinforcements. And by the way, this is clearly a horrible plan if they're traveling to get to Atlantia and the Ascended know exactly what route they're taking and like can follow them there with 800 people, and they didn't think about that
Dumb.
They would come with an army, and now you're like surrounded in this one shitty town.
Well, it doesn't help that he shared his plans with those entire group of like.
Yeah, like why wouldn't you lie? Why wouldn't you lie?
I am the one they call the Dark One, and I am headed home with my maiden. My
Don't
address,
follow us.
My address is 8226.
My social security number is 527. Like what?
My social security number is 0000182 because he's old.
Like, it's so dumb. Like, it's such a horrible plan. Kieran doesn't want to go get reinforcements, but because he thinks it's dangerous, and he doesn't want to leave Cass, but he goes anyway. And Poppy expresses worry for Kieran, and he calls her by her nickname for the first time, because Kieran this whole time has been calling her Penelope, like her full name, and now he calls her Poppy, which indicates that he thinks they're friends.
Such a bad name.
Yeah, it is a bad name. Poppy and Cass have a conversation where he explains what actually happened to Shay. Which
He's like, after the sky's on fire, let me finally get back to that conversation
Yeah.
and all the questions that you had. It literally is like the
most
the,
awkward time to bring this up.
like, okay, sir, I get that you want like to talk about this before I die, but like the interlude was quite a drastic tone change.
Yeah, indeed. You're like, she's like, you don't really have to talk about this now. And he's like, but I want to. So why don't you explain, Ronnie, for a second, what happened to Shay?
I forget.
That's okay. Never mind. So,
You do.
Shay.
There's something like
What do you remember?
that she was eventually brought to the Ascended.
Yes, that she was brought to the Ascended, but importantly, that she betrayed him. That she traded Malik, Castiel's brother,
Oh yeah.
to the Ascended, basically to save her own skin.
Yes.
And when she escaped with Cass, when they both escaped, because they were both in the hands of the Ascended at one point, she tried to do it again
With Cass.
with Cass's life.
Yes.
And Cass basically had to kill her
Yes.
for betraying him and his brother. Or really, he killed her in a fit of rage, but we love people who kill their domestic partner in a fit of rage. I mean, I get she was betraying him, but that's still a very dicey situation. Anyway, like what the fuck? But Cass kills her, and he basically has kept this a secret from everyone because he didn't want to hurt Alistair, that his daughter essentially died a coward and a traitor. And Poppy, this gives Poppy a new perspective that Cass, or rather it reinforces, it's like the final lid in the coffin for Poppy in terms of how she feels about him. Like, she's like, oh my god, that you would suffer that and keep that to yourself and let her be remembered as like a hero proves what a good person you are, even though, again, remember, he murdered her, but okay.
We're not getting too into the semantics of it.
Yeah, but she's like, everything I said at dinner about how I was in love with you and I chose you and I feel really good about that you're the first decision I made for myself, even though that's technically not true because he kidnapped her, forced her into marriage, and she kind of Stockholm syndromed her way into getting to this decision. All of it was true.
I want to remind you guys that this is actually close to the end of the book. So all of our synopses have taken about 400 or 500 pages. What we've talked about is not 400 or 500 pages worth of content. So that just shows you how absolutely ridiculously stupid this book is. Like, this is like the final act.
And it feels a lot longer when you're actually reading it because so much of it's just filler. Like, this is all actual plot points that are important.
That was a hiccup, geez. Sorry.
There's so much nothing. So it's like a big moment for Cass because it's basically a love confession from Poppy that she like wants to be married to him and that she isn't being forced into this marriage.
So he's like, marry me right now.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. They fuck in a pond at one point.
Oh my god.
Like, I forgot that scene. I just thought I'd mention it because I'm sure people who are fans of the book are going to be upset that I didn't mention it. But they fuck in a pond. And that's the first time, a little before this, that she's like, I feel like that was a really good lay and I could do this for a while.
That was good. I'll do it for life.
Yeah, it's a big moment for her too. So Vanetta, who remembers Kieran's sister, brings a gown to Poppy and they get married. So she basically is like, okay, let's get married now. And he's like, okay.
I'm not complaining.
So, yep, they get
the sooner
married.
I put a ring in it, the sooner I can put a dick in it.
Yeah, they get married knowing full well that like 800 Ascended are on their way to come
Which
kill
is
them.
kind of like, what an insane sidebar.
I know.
You've got life and death intermingled so closely together like an Akko War.
Yeah, so funny. I was like, all right, sure, I guess. I mean, it makes kind of sense, but it's silly and stupid that they get like a dress and they do the whole like wedding thing. But the important thing is after they get married, there's the sky turns pitch black and there's like an omen and it shows that Nyktos, who's like one of the gods.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Nope.
It says, showing that Nyktos, although sleeping, expresses approval of the marriage.
He's
which
not a god.
Had only happened once before during King Valen's marriage to Queen Eloana.
He's not a god.
But they say in this book he's a god. They say in this book he is a god.
Never mind.
If that's not true later, then I believe you. But in this book, that's what they think. So Quick sidebar. They explain in this world that the Atlanteans believe in the gods just like the Ascended do. But the Ascended lie to people about the gods and what they want, obviously, because the whole ascension thing we covered in the last thing is all facade.
A farce.
But the Atlanteans believe in the gods, they just think the gods are sleeping. Which, again, they don't really clarify what they mean by that. Because it's like, if Nyktos is doing this, how is he asleep? How does that make... What do you mean?
Subconsciously. He's in like a trance.
Okay. All right. Whatever. So yeah, this is a big deal that like Nyktos is showing his approval of the marriage, and they're all like, whoa! And they kind of think that's important. So, after the wedding, of course, they consummate the union, and it's very sexual and full of blood sharing, and they bite each other and fuck each other and
Disgusting.
whatever. Yeah, it was interesting to say the least. And when the 800 soldiers arrive from the Ascended, Duchess Tierman, who you may remember from the first book that Poppy was being looked after by the Duke and Duchess Tierman, and then he was killed by Hawk. When that attack happened, the Duke was killed, and the Duchess shows up, and she's like, Poppy, hey girl, hey. And she comes up, and Cass is like on the walls of the fucking keep, and he's like, yo, it's me, Castile Denier. I'm the Dark One. Who are you, bitch? And Duchess Tierman is like, Poppy, Queen Ileana is gonna miss you.
Mind you, Ileana and Eloana are the two queens' names. Ileana
and
Eloana.
Please,
fucking hell.
Please get better names, fantasy writers, please. But she reveals to Poppy, she tries to like coax Poppy back to the Ascended side, but it's very clear that Poppy's not going to do that. And she reveals to Poppy that Queen Ileana is Poppy's grandmother, which I don't know what she thought that was going to do. Like, that doesn't really change
my evil grandmother
anything.
Doesn't make it any better.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Like, sick. But Duchess Tierman returns to her carriage and lobs the heads of a group of New Haven people, like,
including
over the
Elijah.
wall. Yeah, which includes Elijah and Magda, who is another small character who we were supposed to care about, but whatever. So, of course, they
Go ahead.
I
like how she did such a good job of making us care about those really small characters in the first book, but then when it comes to the second book, I could not give two shits about who dies.
Yeah, same. Literally nobody important. I didn't give a shit. Maybe Dante. I was a little sad about Dante because he was like always around Delano, and
but
I was
now
like,
that death just sounds funny to me.
Yeah,
Dante died in an inferno.
Yeah. Yep, that's really, really funny. And so they go into battle, they fight, and Poppy asks Quentin, which is another Wolven who's friends with Beckett, to cover her while she goes onto the field, and they fight their way through the crowd, and then they, like, whatever. So Poppy's senses are overwhelmed, and she holds this dagger to her throat and threatens to kill herself if any of the Ascended touch her or Cass, which she knows the Ascended want her alive. She doesn't know why, but they really need her alive. And suddenly all the Wolven arrive, and they take down the guards, and they kill everyone, and then reinforcements. So remember, they sent Kieran to go get reinforcements from Scion's Cove, which is a bunch of Wolven
and here he comes.
Atlanteans. Yeah, here comes the cavalry, bitch. Very, again, Helm's Deep, Last Stand, like the people show up and defend the keep. And, yeah, and Poppy makes it and kills the Duchess, and the Duchess tells Poppy before she dies that Malik and Ian, so Malik, Cass's brother, and Ian, her brother, are both still alive, which we already kind of knew. So thanks, bitch. And Poppy kills her ass, and that was actually quite satisfying. She was annoying.
Yep.
Cass reaches the carriage, and the two proceed to have sexual relations in the carriage. It's the fan wiki. That's so funny. So yeah, the reinforcements from Atlantia basically kill all the Ascended, which 800 Ascended is a lot, and they really underplay.
Sizable population.
Yeah, that's a big battle. That's not a small battle. They really downplay. Like, they're like, oh yeah, it was like a quick little fight, and then it was over. And I'm like, dude, that is like
the
full
build-up
on...
was so ridiculous for that little payoff.
Yeah, I'm like, that is not a small battle. That's like, there should be like bodies lining an empty field, like kind of battle. That's a lot of people. So, okay then, fine. Cass and Kieran go with the lone survivor to make sure he sends a message to the Ascended about what happened here today. And Poppy goes to help the wounded because now she's like a fucking,
She's like a medi witch. She's like, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom, light power, you're good, you're cured.
like goes around healing everybody. Okay. Poppy heals a Wolven who tells her that King Valendenir, who's Cass's father, has plans to use her to send a message to the Ascended, and Poppy's like, yeah, that makes sense. And Cass comes back and tells Poppy that the Wolven all felt her calling for them when she was surrounded in the woods, and that's very strange, and like, ooh, what does that mean? Why is that?
Stupid shit.
And so the next day after the battle, everybody is...
The very short battle.
Yeah, everybody is weirdly unfazed, and they are like, okay, peace out, we're going back to Scion's Cove, sick. And the group separates into 3 for some reason, and they travel through the mist of the mountains, and they all cuddle. And Poppy dreams about the night her parents were killed again, and she thinks she knows who the man was that was speaking to her in her dreams. And she goes into like this weird trance in the mountains, and she like gets up out of like Cass's arms and like wanders through the fucking forest listening to like this voice of a woman telling her to like go from home, and
I know who that was.
Find the answers there. And I'm sure it's like some god shit or something. And Cass grabs her like to stop her from like wandering off and sleepwalking essentially, and then she was like, I was about to just walk off a cliff, and he's like, yeah bitch, you were, don't do that. And they think she's crazy because she's like, I saw a woman and she was speaking to me, and they're like, okay sweetie, why don't you go lay down.
There.
Yeah. And Poppy literally believes that it was the goddess Eos returning her to a sleep peace. And I'm like, okay, why do you think that? But okay, cool.
No, Kieran thinks that it was...
Oh, Kieran thinks that?
That it was the goddess.
Sorry, I don't remember.
Poppy has no clue who it was. Poppy doesn't think that it was... Poppy thinks it was someone else.
Okay, so this is a big deal. Later, they're in this town in Zion's Cove, and Beckett... Okay, so Cass needs to speak with Kieran's sister by himself for some reason. And Beckett, who's one of the little Wolven friends, tells Poppy, oh, I know you wanted to see the Temple of Nyktos. I'll take you. I'll guard you. And she's like...
Which is weird because Beckett... Weird.
Yeah, it's very odd. And she doesn't think anything of this.
La-di-da-di-da.
She's like, okay, Beckett, sure. Take me to go see the temple. When she could have asked Kieran or Delano, who are a little bit more, I don't know, reliable guards, but okay, Beckett offers to take her, and she goes with him. And these angry Atlanteans, by the way, in this town keep saying that she's like a whore.
An ascended whore.
Yeah, and they don't really like her, and they're not about this, and the sky begins to rain blood, and they take it
Which
as
is
a
another
sign.
omen.
Yeah, it's like a bad omen that they are doing what the gods want. I don't know what...
Like by berating her and trying to...
Oh, right. And a blood tree forms behind Poppy, and like it just reinforces that they hate her. So
she does her empath thing.
Yeah, because all these Wolven are like circling around her and trying to kill her.
Well, what about the empath thing with the Atlanteans?
I don't remember. What does she do?
She absorbs all of their anger and pushes it back on them and effectively beams them to death with hatred and lasers. Because she's just that cool.
She's just such a badass bitch.
She's a badass, but she don't take no prisoners.
Yeah. Oh, and she starts glowing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Cass like draws his sword and like kneels to her because this is like another sick as fuck omen. And the king and queen arrive. Cass's parents show up. Yeah, where did they come from? What the fuck? Weren't you supposed to be in Atlantia? Like,
just ruling the kingdom?
Yeah, okay then. And they show up and they're like, what the fuck? Who is this person, Cass? Like, what is going on here? And she takes off, the queen, Cass's mother, takes off her crown and places it on the floor of Nyktos' temple. And the crown dramatically catches fire and burns off all the gilded bones and and it shines with gold again. So like this crown notably has all these like bones on it, and it like they burn off, and then the crown is gold, and it's like this big omen because
The next book is called The Crown of Gilded Bowl, by the way.
yeah, because so the Queen Eloana tells everyone that they must bow to the last descendant of Nyktos, the rightful queen to Atlantia. So we're apparently being told, based on this omen of what happens to the crown, that Poppy is the rightful queen to Atlantia because she's a descendant of Nyktos himself.
Yes.
So Poppy is literally descended from a god.
Yes.
What?
That's the book.
Like, what? That is so stupid.
Rory, it gets even stupider.
That is so fucking stupid.
Rory, it gets even stupider.
Here's, before we go, because we're done with our synopsis, we always have comments at the end.
Because we're stupid and we hate ourselves.
Why I hate this, and I've said it before and I'll say it again because I think it's so important, is that a lot of authors will do this thing where they'll make their main character like... Okay, let me phrase it this way. You know how in the past everybody was doing like all these chosen one narratives and everybody got really sick of it because it was like people were pointing out in the writing that chosen one narratives are a really lazy way for the author to make the main character important when there's no other really conceivable reason why this person would be in this situation or be important.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like what they're doing with all this, like, being descended from the gods shit, it's like a roundabout way of doing that. Like, you're essentially still doing a chosen one narrative. You're just circumventing calling it that by, like, making everything about the god's will. Like, it's what Sarah J. Maas did in Throne of Glass, where, like, oh, Aylin's doing all this shit because the gods want her to, and she's descended from a god, so she, like, so she's the most special. I'm like, so she's a chosen one. She's following a path that has been laid out for her by literal gods that she cannot circumvent, and she is the most special of every person because she's descended from a god, and that explains why she's in this situation.
Yeah.
It's the same shit. I'm like, you're just doing a chosen one narrative and you're trying to be sneaky about it, and I'm not fucking buying it. I actually liked it a lot better thinking that Poppy was special in this very understated way. Like, my impression of her being the maiden was that she was special for a less, I don't know, intense or lofty reason. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was okay with her being part Atlantean. Like, I thought that was fine. That made sense. Oh, that's why she wasn't killed by the Craven.
That makes it tells you why she was immune.
Yeah, like, I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. She's part Atlantean sick. Like, that was actually interesting to me and felt less contrived and made a lot more sense, especially in this world where, like, Atlanteans and people and Cravens are all kind of intermingled and they're, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
I felt a little bit less offended by that. But, first of all, I hate God shit. I think it's so lazy. And for me, I like the mystery of not understanding if there is a deity, what their intention is. I feel like a lot of gods in fantasy stories, and people keep putting them in fantasy stories, like, they are way too involved in earthly affairs, and it bugs me, personally. It is not a
Especially in
personal
this
preference
series,
of mine.
you have no clue. I just like refreshed my memory on some of the connections in this series, and it gets so off the chain. Like, Rory, I might have to have you read The War of Two Queens, which is the 4th book.
I was gonna read it anyway, because the way the 3rd book is going is it's so batshit insane that I just have to know, like,
But Rory,
how this
you
ends.
kind of have to read the first Flesh in the Fire.
Why?
Because that one actually makes stuff make sense.
Poo. I don't want to do that.
That one was as good as From Blood and Ash.
Okay.
But don't read the second one. I DNF'd that.
Okay. Like, I don't know. I just am getting really sick. I feel like all this God stuff is so fucking lazy.
It gets even lazier because there's not just gods. There's something other than gods that are more powerful than gods.
You know why it bothers me too is I feel like it takes the stakes out of the story.
It does.
Like, I want the heroes' actions to have consequences, and it's only them who is the reason anything is happening.
Correct.
I don't want outside influences to be the sole reason anyone is doing anything.
Why not?
because it's lazy.
It removes the agency.
Yeah, exactly. And then I don't feel the stakes in the story. I'm like, okay, well, it's going to be fine. You know, I can't even blame a character for decisions they make, which I love doing. Like, it sounds, and I don't mean it in a negative way. I'm like, oh, well, remember they did this, so it's coming back to bite them. You know, like, it's like anything that I want to explore the nature of the character's humanity and personality, and I just feel like all this God stuff.
It's just divinity.
And also, what's stupid about introducing God stuff is this, like, and I get it that our sort of Western, because we're, American people.
Monotheistic?
Well, it's more like Christian influence has really hammered into the head of most people this idea of an omnipotent super being, which I know isn't necessarily always accurate of every divine canon, like the Greeks and the Norse and all those different mythologies. Their gods are not omnipotent. They're powerful, but not necessarily omnipotent or omniscient.
Mm-hmm.
And so I understand that, but at the same time, introducing the concept of like gods and deities, it's a harder sell for me that they are at a loss as to fix their own problems.
They also need to have flaws too, because that's like a big thing with Greek mythology, is every god has their flaw. Like Athena has her hubris, and Zeus has his loins, and like you need some power checks with gods, but this book does not have that at all.
Right. And it's not even just about like the power checks, and that's a really good point, is kind of piggybacking off of that concept but slightly different, is say in Greek mythology, actual Greek mythology, the way that the gods operate with heroes, like demigods and the heroes they follow, is it's like a way for them to war with each other indirectly. And essentially it's for their own amusement. Like, people aren't doing anything for some grand reason other than
people are pawns.
Yeah, pawns to fulfill the god's amusement and the god's amusement alone.
Yeah.
They're not there to save the world from shit. You know what I mean? Like, they're just there to do what the gods need them to do for their own personal reasons.
These gods are different, though.
Yeah,
That's
I know.
what makes it so hard to believe.
Annoys me because it's like, why can't you as a deity fix your own problem? Like, at least in Percy Jackson, it's very clear that the gods, again, use the demigods to do shit they can't do directly with each other because they're all family. Like, and you would cause like a whole global conflict to directly
like
war with to directly war with each other. But again, that's their personal bullshit. Like, they're not doing this for altruistic reasons. Their kids have nothing to do with the rest of the world. It has to do with the gods' bullshit and their bullshit alone. Like, I don't understand if the gods are so concerned about like some world-altering, destroying conflict for an altruistic reason. Like, they're so concerned about humanity, the earth, whatever it is they're concerned about. Why are you a god using a mortal to fix this problem? Why can't you fix the problem? Why? Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
Like, it doesn't add up in my fucking brain. Like, I'm just like, I get you're not an
2 + 2 does not equal fish.
I get you're not an omnipotent god, but there's no logical reason why you would need a mortal conduit for this particular thing. You know, like, maybe it becomes clearer later, but right now, that's very strange. And very stupid that Poppy's descended from a god.
It's just...
I hated it.
I'm glad you loved it.
Thanks, I hate it.
I'm glad you liked it. There's more to come where that comes from, because it's gonna get freaky.
Yeah, I'm already a little bit into book 3, and I've already lost my shit. And at least book 3 is way more entertaining. Like, book 3 I find crazy, but it's actually fun to listen to. Whereas this book was very boring. And it's a shame because there were some really good scenes in this book. Like, the stuff that was good was really good. It just was
outweighed by the amount of stupid stuff.
So much useless, boring scenes I cared nothing about.
Well, I'm Rory.
And I am over it.
I'm Ronnie.
And I'm Rory.
And this has been
Have and have not.
an episode where we what?
Where one of us has read a book and the other has not.
And the other one wants to kill the other one.
Yeah, and the other one wants to kill the other one. Yeah, 100%. So be on the lookout for our next episode.
Woohoo!
And keep an eye out for our very special episodes and our Sinful Sundays. And we'll
Oh, yeah.
see you guys very soon. Bye.
Bye.